Avatar fan and fellow CG artist will be excited to hear about your upcoming book, Creating Worlds. It's an art book unlike any other, as it is the first one that really encompasses the entirety of your 20 years of career works. I've seen it's made of 300 pages, talking about dozens of universes you created and written entirely by yourself. It's filled with uncropped illustration and behind-the-scene anecdotes, and the whole is presented somehow like a chronological journey through your path in the industry. So my question is, how did this writing journey started? What was your vision and intention for the structure of the book? And additionally of being an art book, what do you wanted to narrate through it?
Well, thank you so much. All of us artists, of course, dream about having a book of our work, right? And working in film, it's really hard because we don't know the rights to our work. And I just kind of resigned myself to the fact that I'm like, that's probably not going to happen. I'll try and do a book of my personal work someday. But then I was sort of realizing that after Disney purchased Fox, I was like, a lot of my work is under one house right now. And so I sort of just casually asked Josh Izzo, our franchise guru, and I was like, hey, who would I talk to if I wanted to like pitch Disney on a book? And, it's kind of like super like early exploratory thing. And then he instantly put me in touch with the right people at Disney. And and then it was like, oh, I have a pitch in like less than a week. It's like, oh, okay. So like I quickly like threw together a bunch of my stuff, made a quick little PDF thing and a layout. And then pretty soon I was pitching it. And then like within a couple days, it was like, yeah, no, this is happening. And I was like, oh, wow, that's cool. Yeah, we want to do it. It was like, okay, so we think we want to partner you with this publisher. I'm like, wait. Does that mean you guys want to do it? so that was super cool and exciting. And then it just became this like exciting scramble. And obviously it's a high honor because they don't really publish a lot of books about current artists. They tend to do, artists from the past. But anyway, as far as the structure of it, I basically pulled all the work that I could that was under the Disney Fox banner, and some stuff wasn't able to be used for different reasons, and I just decided to write it myself. It was sort of the simplest thing. It was the clearest thing. I didn't want to deal with interviews or have to write in the third person, and I'm just kind of more of a casual type of guy. And so I'm like, I'll just have it be in my voice. And it starts out as sort of a beginnings chapter. I just talk about my childhood and early career and all that stuff, and sort of how I got into art and film, and
wow.
and then it just goes kind of chronologically by the films, what I learned and how I grew, and different people that I've worked with, and because I've been so fortunate to work with so many wonderful directors, production designers, fellow concept artists. I asked James Cameron to write the foreword, and he instantly said yes, which was amazing.
Actually, I had a question about finding creativity within constraints. In the foreword of your book, written by James Cameron, he said something like this: I view Dylan as the perfect visual partners. I paint pictures with words, and Dylan emerged as a master visual storyteller, as he allowed the audience to understand what the film was trying to say thematically in every scene. In that sense, James Cameron seems to give you a lot of creative freedom in building the world of Avatar, a blank canvas that must be both fun and rewarding as a concept artist and production designer, we can guess. But on the other hand, in the chapter about Alice in Wonderland, you mentioned that the biggest change with Alice that there were too many possibilities, a complete lack of rules being inherent to the story itself. So I was wondering, do you think it's important for directors to trust the artist with their vision, even if that means letting go of some control? And conversely, can total freedom become more difficult than working within constraints? Finally, do you have any specific techniques to avoid going everywhere chaotically?
That's a good question, and I definitely prefer to have constraints, because boundaries and constraints lead to creative solutions, and unexpected solutions. If you have everything wide open, it's almost crippling because you're like, I can do anything, and so. Jim normally has an idea, if not a perfectly in focus one. He has an idea, which is helpful. Sometimes we may not know that until we've shown him something. And so sometimes we joke we have to do the first wrong thing to figure out what he wants. Because what is in the script is minimal to keep the script short, right? But he's like, oh, no, I was thinking of this, and this. Okay, now we know. I definitely prefer some guidance, and if I don't have it, like 'cause there's some stuff in the script that I just have to go for it, because it's oftentimes hard to get Jim's time, and a lot of times I just have to take stab, and so all I can do is serve the story. And that is, just look at script. What does the scene need, right? I'm not screaming out to have some crazy design that's like, look at me, look how clever I am, or whatever. It's just, nope. What's going to help tell the story based on my experience on these films and this franchise? What's going to fit in well here? What, like pick the moment of like, is this a wondrous moment where we're looking at something new, or is this a tense dialogue moment and you just need something to enforce the moment? So that's a big touchstone, and I think that was one of the biggest differences transitioning from concept artist to production designer.
Yeah,
is you really have to think more like a filmmaker and kind of be like an armchair director, and think holistically. Because when you're a concept artist, you just care about a painting, and that's all you want to do is make a pretty painting. But yeah, there were certainly a lot of designs that I was able to just do. Like big example would be the Cove of the Ancestors. We were trying to design it, and it pretty much kind of started out looking like the Hallelujah Mountains over water. Like, okay, and we've seen it. I also wanted to give it a sense of place, because when you're at water level, you're just in floating mountains. So I kind of like, okay, if this is a cove, you want a backstop to tell you that it's a cove. And Jim was talking about our mountains kind of being a different aspect ratio, because he wanted them above and below water. So he wanted characters to be able to dive under them underwater, and so they couldn't be 1,000 feet tall. So we're sort of, okay, they're going to be more slab-like, and that made me think of the arches being that sort of flat slab shape. And then I thought about, okay, that'd be cool if the arches kind of like march their way down, and kind of became the floating islands. And so I kind of quickly banged out this rough 3D model and did a loose sketch over, and just kind of like right before meeting. And he's like, okay, cool, yeah, that's kind of neat. And it wasn't a home run. It was just kind of like, okay, yeah, that's something to think about. And then we didn't have anything better, and so it kind of threw it up on the wall. And it just kind of hovered there, and then I was like, oh, it's over here differently. And then, again, I did not know it was approved, and then it was literally when I read the script where it's like, the kids on the Relu come under the floating island and look up to reveal the big inverted arch structure. I'm like, oh, I guess it's approved.
In the James Cameron foreword, there's an interesting passage about the 3 levels of storytelling. One is about the plot, the second is about the thematic, and the third is about creating a feeling, like a spiritual or deep connection to those fictional words. My question is, how do you create a connection between the viewers and those imaginary words? Is it through a visual language of shapes that will make every design interconnected? Or is it about the use of more scientific subconscious techniques, like through cinematography or even the Gestalt theory? And most importantly, how do you manage as a production designer to assure every design will fit with each other?
Yeah, that's a good question with a long, complicated answer that I don't even know I can answer fully. A lot of it is just kind of gut, like what feels good together, and like, okay, like that just works over here, that works there. But a lot of it, I'm carving out space for each, like in Avatar, whether it's a clan or a location. Okay, what makes their look, what makes their language specific to them, and how it works. Like for example, with the Na'vi cultures, we sort of came up with this sort of bent tension hoop construction for the Marui, with leaning into a lot of tensile techniques that Jim was really wanting to explore. So we were looking at a lot of that stuff, and then knowing that worked with Jim, it was wanting to be consistent across the Na'vi culture, and part, oh dear God, that took forever to get approved, let's just riff on it. And and so like we would do a lot of the same construction methods like at High Camp that you would see at Mekaina, and then you'll see it's very little bit for like Ash Village and also the Wind Trader Gondola. So they look very different, but there's kind of a commonality to some of the methodology. But we adapted it to their environment and to their resources and to what they have. And so as far as the logical side, I mean, most everything starts with reference of Earth, right? Because obviously, giant theme of Avatar is, of course, appreciating the natural world and reflecting those feelings back on our own planet and caring for it. And so we try and start with something from our world. Also, I always like to say, like, nature's the best designer. It's arrogant to think that I could do something in an afternoon sketch that nature's been developing for millions of years.
I actually have a short question about pre-production work, because when I watch a movie, there really is this impression of plausibility, as if we were almost watching a documentary taking place on another planet. Do you think researching extensively about nature and other geological patterns, culture, and real-world law is an important first step in your work? And is it hard to find a balance between getting inspired by nature without being too constrained by reality?
Yes, for sure. And working with Jim has made me a much more disciplined designer. Like, it's in my nature just to like dive in and just start a crazy sketch or a painting, like completely uninformed, just like, here's kind of what's in my head. And I still like to do that occasionally because there's a nugget in there of a first impression that's valuable, but a lot of times it's uninformed. And so it's good to do the research, figure out what's grounding. And, Jim is hardcore about that. Like, it needs to make sense, exist in this world. And so it's created this discipline in my design process of asking those questions. How? Why?
Yeah.
And you always come up with interesting details, because then you look at, okay, how does nature solve that same problem? And you go look at similar organisms or ecosystems, and you figure out, okay, how do they solve that problem? Let's be inspired to solve it in a different way. But that is, we're still pulling from the real world. So we rarely ever want it to be like a one-for-one analogy. Oh, they took that thing and they stuck it there. It's like, okay, it's a metaphor of that thing, right? Like the skim wing is basically a flying fish, right? But it's a very different, cool-looking flying fish. And also it's our instinct as designers just to go nuts, and to have the discipline. Like, it happens all the time with me and Jim, and that we always just, designers are enthusiastic and just go big and go crazy and say, okay, rein it in. That's too much. It doesn't serve the story. It's either distracting or it's not plausible. And it goes back to what I was saying earlier, is that, like, we need to see Earth and Pandora. We need to see ourselves in the Na'vi, in their values and their culture, and see Earth in Pandora, the best parts of it, the aspirational parts of it, right?
Of course.
And so if we do something too crazy, it doesn't work. So it's reining that in, and it's finding that boundary. And I think that's what's difficult about my side of the design, is that boundary is kind of less defined. It sort of exists in Jim's mind, and I try and think I have a decent gauge for it sometimes, but I can't predict what's going to land or what he's thinking. And so yes, that is a challenge. But as far as how to constantly get that, it's an endless balancing act, and getting to work on multiple films at once across multiple cultures is kind of the way to do it, so I can make sure it's balanced. Because what was great was knowing the whole saga. Like, I know the ending of 5, and so it's knowing where we're going, so that I can reserve certain design things and design choices for different films, different clans, different biomes. And that's extremely helpful, so that you're not like retconning something as you get onto the next film, like, oh shit, we already did that, but now we got to change it, and so we've carved out a lot of design real estate for the next couple films.
I have a final question related to your what's next, basically. Your book is retracing those 20 years of works and seems to represent the culmination of your career. And I was wondering, what were your projects in a post-Avatar future? Would you go back to what you said you really love, which is oil painting, and maybe developing your own universe, but in a more traditional media, like a comic book, for instance? Is this something you could see yourself do in the future?
Short answer, yes. And I have sort of a fantasy of, after Avatar, to, I'm not going to say retire, because artists don't retire, that's silly, but like semi-retire from film business, or at least just from being a full-time production designer, and just be creative. And oil painting, illustrated books, there's still children's books I want to do. There's just, a creative person's a creative person, and I'm so blessed to have been an Avatar for so long, but it's also, I've been an Avatar for so long. And so, so there's many creative things that I want to do. And yes, absolutely, tons of worlds and story ideas, and a format that interests me that I'm really excited about. I call it the adult children's picture book. where
Oh, cool.
it's formatted like a children's picture book, and but it's whatever subject matter you want it to be, where you can just tell kind of a simpler medium story, or like gloss over with something. It could be a feature or a short or whatever, but you're laying the groundwork without having to like do like a 300-page graphic novel or write a whole script, or it's a way of dipping your toe into a world or a story idea. And there aren't a lot of good examples of that format, but it's something I would like to try, because it's sort of a more minimal investment, because those storybooks are they're only like 32 pages usually. And yeah, there's it's the curse of a creative, right? You always have too many ideas and never enough time.
Yeah.
And now, Bailey, I hope you don't mind. Let's just let these two talk, because this is your boss, Arnaud. Let's go.
Oh yeah, no, I wanted to thank Arnaud for all his amazing work in Frontiers. We haven't actually had much of a chance to interact at all, but thank you so much. The game looks incredible.